I'm Katie Couric in Amman, Jordan, site of a last-ditch effort by President Bush and Iraqi Prime Minister Maliki to bring the unrelenting violence engulfing Iraq under control. On the eve of the summit, Jim Axelrod, traveling with the president, reports the Bush administration is having doubts about Maliki. Elizabeth Palmer in Baghdad says one of the most powerful men in Iraq has withdrawn his support of Maliki, at least for now. At the Pentagon, David Martin tells us, forget a troop withdrawal. The U.S. is sending more soldiers into Baghdad to try to restore order. That was supposed to be the job of Iraqi police trained here in Jordan. Mark Phillips reports why it isn't working. And I'll talk to Iraqi refugees who have fled here, as promises of freedom and democracy have all but vanished.
We are waiting for our death in Baghdad.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric reporting tonight from Amman, Jordan.
Good evening, everyone. Can Iraq and its fledgling democracy be saved from the violence that's tearing it apart? And if so, how? That's the question President Bush and Iraqi Prime Minister Maliki will try to answer here, 500 miles from Baghdad, at a summit tomorrow hosted by Jordan's King Abdullah. But their meeting is already getting off to a very shaky start. In fact, it didn't start. Not when it was supposed to, anyway. We have a team of CBS News correspondents deployed to cover this very important story. And we begin with Chief White House Correspondent Jim Axelrod. Jim?
Katie, a summit is supposed to be a discussion, but so far President Bush and Prime Minister Maliki haven't had one. The president received word as he was on Air Force One traveling to Jordan that his meeting with Maliki was off tonight. The White House insists this has nothing to do with a story that appeared in the New York Times this morning, citing a confidential White House memo with deep concerns about whether Maliki is up to the job. Maliki arrived in Amman first, under a cloud of doubt. The memo, written by National Security Advisor Stephen Hadley 3 weeks ago today, doesn't question Maliki's desire, but his capability. His intentions seem good when he talks with Americans, but the reality on the streets of Baghdad suggests Maliki is either ignorant of what is going on, misrepresenting his intentions, or that his capabilities are not yet sufficient to turn his good intentions into actions. President Bush had boarded Air Force One expecting discussions with Maliki and King Abdullah. Instead, he was left to visit just with the host, Jordan's king. The White House insisted Mr. Bush was not snubbed and that he'll meet with Maliki tomorrow. Expected on the agenda, the repositioning of U.S. troops inside Iraq, engaging Iran and Syria, and dealing with the militias. Maliki's relationship with the militia's leader, anti-American cleric Muqtada al-Sadr, was today's other headline. 30 members of the Iraqi parliament and 6 cabinet ministers loyal to Sadr made good on a threat and walked out on the government today to protest Maliki's meetings with Mr. Bush. And to further throw things off balance here, today President Bush's former Secretary of State Colin Powell added his name to the list of those who say Iraq is in a state of civil war. Powell says he uses that term because, quote, I like to face reality. Katie?
Jim, any more insight as to why this first scheduled meeting didn't happen?
Apparently, Prime Minister Maliki was not happy when King Abdullah tried to widen and broaden the agenda to include a discussion about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. He's under enough pressure not to be here to begin with at home. When they tried to add that to the agenda, he said no way.
Jim Axelrod traveling with the president tonight. The goal for both the United States and Iraq is to get U.S. troops out as soon as possible. But with the violence in Iraq only getting worse, the Pentagon is getting ready to send more troops in. Here's David Martin with the latest.
With conditions in Baghdad too dire to wait for the outcome of either the summit or the administration's strategy review, commanders in Iraq have ordered reinforcements into the capital. About 3,500 U.S. combat troops are being moved from other parts of the country into the city, where a combined force of 40,000 Americans and Iraqis have so far been unable to stop the spiral of violence. The American reinforcements will take the place of Iraqi troops, which the government had promised but never delivered. But as Democratic Senator Jack Reed said, numbers alone are not likely to determine the outcome.
I think that the number of U.S. forces is not the critical issue. The critical issue is what the Iraqi government is going to do to keep their government together, quell the violence, and provide the services to the people that a government should and must provide.
Members of the Iraq Study Group, headed by former Secretary of State Baker, have now reached agreement on their recommendations for a new war strategy, which will be delivered to the president and released publicly a week from today. Sources close to the group expected to recommend a restructuring of U.S. military forces, putting in more trainers and fewer combat troops, setting a timetable for the Iraqi government to take responsibility for its own security, and holding talks with Iran and Syria.
The White House says the group's report will be a factor but not a blueprint for the president in deciding on changes in his war strategy. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
Now let's bring in our correspondent in Baghdad, Elizabeth Palmer. Elizabeth, David Martin just reported that thousands more U.S. troops will be deployed in Baghdad. What is the reaction on the street there?
Well, I have to say it's going to be skepticism on the part of most Iraqis because they've been promised two big troop initiatives, U.S. troop initiatives, in the past 6 months that were designed to quell the violence here, and neither has worked out that way. So although they recognize they need help with security, they're not at all convinced that more U.S. soldiers is the answer. Now, as for Muqtada al-Sadr's followers, they're going to regard this as a deliberate provocation. They have said from the beginning they want U.S. troops out and quickly. So the idea that the troop strength is going to be beefed up has made them very angry. In fact, when we talked to them a couple of hours ago, they said this might not only make them boycott the government indefinitely, but they may even decide to quit altogether.
Elizabeth Palmer in Baghdad tonight. Zalmay Khalilzad is the U.S. ambassador to Iraq. He's here in Jordan for the summit. I spoke with him earlier tonight and asked him if he fears Prime Minister Maliki is too weak to restore order and govern his country.
Prime Minister Maliki faces a huge challenge. There is a sectarian conflict that's going on there. There are terrorists who are seeking to undermine his government. There are other armed groups who are also outside the control of the government. There are some neighbors who are seeking to undermine his government. So he's got a lot on his plate. I feel his pain. I'm as the ambassador there, I can see the huge challenges that he faces.
Does he have your confidence?
He has my confidence. I believe that he wants Iraq to succeed, and he's a prime minister. Iraq's failure will be his failure. His success will be Iraq's success.
What do you think the big news of this summit meeting will be? Will more authority be transferred in terms of overseeing the Iraqi security forces to Prime Minister Maliki?
There will be an agreement on transfer of capabilities, Iraqi capabilities, at a faster rate to the Iraqis and to the Prime Minister, yes.
Many people will be disappointed and upset to hear that additional troops are being sent right now.
I think an adjustment in our strategy that has prospects, increased prospects for success, that would involve even some additional troops, I believe, will have support.
What would you say to Americans who feel this is a lost cause? It's just an abyss of violence.
I can understand that looking from far away from the United States, that this looks a very difficult situation, that we're not making as much progress as the American people would like, that a lot of lives are being lost. But the goal of success in Iraq, for the sake of the future of this region, which is the defining challenge of our time, we need to do all that we can to help Iraq succeed.
There's much more CBS News straight ahead. And still to come from Amman, the plan was to train the next generation of Iraqi police officers right here in Jordan. Why that plan failed, next.